sure he'll mention the CFR, and his title is Plurilingual and Intercultural Education for Democracy. Later on this afternoon, we'll also hear from Sarah Breslin at ECML, which is also part of the Council of Europe. So we have a bit of a Council of Europe theme, and we're very pleased to have all our speakers from the Council of Europe with us this afternoon. So Murat, I'd like to hand over to you, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Graham, and I hope that you can hear me well. And good afternoon, everyone. Please allow me first to pass Michael's best regards to all of you. And due to a health issue, he could not join us this afternoon, but luckily it is nothing serious. It's a great pleasure to have the opportunity to addressing such a distinguished audience today. My name is Ahmet Murat Kılıç. I work at the Education Department of the Council of Europe, and I'm the Program Manager for Digital Citizenship Education, Artificial Intelligence in Education, as well as the Language Policy Program at the Council of Europe, at the Education Policy Division. I apologize. At the moment, I work on the CFR, and more specifically on promoting and disseminating the publication and its key aspects for learning and teaching through a series of CFR webinars. And I'm sure that some of you are already aware of it, and I will briefly mention it later. And on the other hand, I also coordinate the translation of the CFR companion volume into more than 10 world languages, including Italian, Spanish, and Czech, and Estonian, Japanese, Chinese, etc. And most of them will be available, hopefully, by the end of this year on the CFR website. My presentation includes two parts. In the first part, I will talk a little bit about the background on language education at the Council of Europe and update you on the recent developments. And in the second part, I briefly talk about language assessment and also the CFR profiles presented in the CFR companion volume. I would like to start my presentation. By the way, Graham, I don't see my presentation on the screen. Is that normal?
Murat, you just need to click on the Start Presentation button.
Oh, apologies. Apologies.
Do you
for
see
that.
it?
Okay.
That's
okay,
it, and then you can move forward. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, I would like to start my presentation by reminding guys why Council of Europe concerns with language education. And as we all know, the Council of Europe was a peace-building project in the aftermath of the Second World War. And among the many causes of the war, in fact, definitely were alienation and discrimination. And peace, no doubt, can be built by starting understanding each other. So it was therefore at the very early stages of its existence. In 1954, the Council of Europe adopted the European Cultural Convention. And the convention was designed to foster among the nationals of all member states to study of each other's languages, culture, civilization, and history. And the main aim was to build or improve a greater understanding of one another among the peoples of Europe. On the other hand, also it aims to protect and promote Europe's rich linguistic and cultural diversity. Okay. Since the adoption of the European Cultural Convention, a great deal of work has been carried out in modern languages. But I would like to emphasize the CFR, the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, which has been the main policy document since 2001. And it has played a key role to promote quality plurilingual education and facilitate greater social mobility as well as stimulate reflection and exchange between language professionals from curriculum development and in teacher education. Although it is called a European framework, in fact, its impact has gone beyond the borders of Europe. As I mentioned earlier, the CFR companion volume, as well as the CFR, has been translated and referred to in language education and policy in countries other than European ones. According to the Council of Europe, language education should be based on learners' needs. And I will revisit several times this one. And it should be plurilingual and intercultural, and it should be of high quality. And we firmly believe that quality language education contributes to social inclusion, integration, and democracy. And it is fundamental to the effective enjoyment of the right to education and other human rights. Now, I would like to inform you about some recent developments at the language policy program. And I assume that many of you are already aware of the CFR companion volume, a definitive version of which we published last year in April, and a preliminary version already published back in 2018. And we invited the language education professionals to a launching conference. But due to the inclusion of sign languages and elaborating sign languages in the companion volume, we took it a step further and extended with sign language competencies. And of course, it took us some time to publish the definitive version. And let me talk a little bit about the companion volume, about which I'm sure that you already read or heard from us. It broadens the scope of language education, and there has been some academic and societal development since 2001. It presents the key aspects of the CFR for teaching and learning. I would like to stress teaching and learning in a user-friendly form. And it contains the complete set of extended CFR descriptors, which replaces the 2001 set. So anyone wants to refer to the descriptors, I urge them to refer to the CFR companion volume. And now it includes descriptors for mediation, online interaction, plurilingual and pluricultural competence, as well as sign language competencies. All descriptors in this edition are modality inclusive. I mean, they are updated to sign languages, all of them, and they are all gender neutral, reflecting the Council of Europe's gender equality principles. Further to that, since the start of this year, or second part of last year, we started drafting a draft recommendation of the Committee of Ministers to member states on the importance of plurilingual and intercultural education for democratic culture. It will be the first comprehensive recommendation on language education. And it aims giving a fresh impetus to the promotion, development, and implementation of plurilingual and intercultural education. And as Graham mentioned, although we are the two bodies of the same organization, sometimes people differentiate between the ECML and the language policy, but we are working together in close cooperation on the preparation of the draft recommendation. I also should mention this recommendation intends to link the two very important frameworks of the Council of Europe, the CFR and the recent reference framework for competencies of democratic culture, and more specifically refocusing language education on developing a culture of democracy and democracy at large. Sarah might want to touch base on this in her presentation too. I mentioned earlier that we are working on the promotion of the CFR's key aspects, and to do that, the CFR has been exploited by language education policymakers and practitioners for 20 years now in various domains and contexts. However, we believe that some of its key aspects, particularly for teaching and learning, haven't been properly and widely explored. Therefore, we decided to revisit them and try to explore together with the language education professionals. Therefore, we are planned to organize 8 online workshops focusing on action-oriented approach, plurilingual and pluricultural competence, and mediation. We organized already 2 of them, and the upcoming one will be on 6th of May from 4 to 6:30 Central European Time. And they are all planned to take place on the first Thursday of each month except July and August. Last but not least, I would like to mention about the LASLIAM, which some of you might have heard yesterday in the LASLIAM or the LIAM workshop. LASLIAM stands for Literacy and Second Language Learning for the Linguistic Integration of Adult Migrants. I again mentioned earlier that according to the Council of Europe, language education should be based on learners' needs. And this should apply to learners with no literacy or low literacy background in their native languages. I mean migrants who have to take language and knowledge of society tests if they wish to obtain residency and citizenship in a country. And we believe that language courses and tests should also take into account their needs. To support language educators, curriculum designers, and language policymakers in their endeavor to design, implement, evaluate, and improve curricula tailored to the specific needs of the target learners, we are developing a reference guide. It is being now validated and will be hopefully available later this year. Please allow me to share some of our concerns regarding to language assessment and more specifically language tests given to migrants. Language tests are sometimes used for gatekeeping purposes. So this creating barriers to the integration of migrants and leading to human rights violations. According to the 2008 Council of Europe and Alte survey on language and knowledge of society policies for migrants, between 2007 and 2018, more countries have started implementing language tests and knowledge of society tests, especially for citizenship purposes. If they are inevitable or they look inevitable, language tests, we strongly recommend test developers to ensure the tests meet the highest standards of quality and fairness if used for migration purposes. Those tests align to the CFR levels, and the passing levels are sometimes kept high by the countries. And this is negatively connotated with the CFR itself. So as you can tell, the CFR has nothing to do with it, but the users or the developers actually, the use of the developers sounds problematic. So I would like to stress that has never been the intention that the CFR should be used to justify as a gatekeeping function of assessment instruments. Okay, a bit about language assessment. It has various purposes, and I should let the experts in this great symposium, to talk and speak about it. However, I would like to draw your attention to action-oriented approach and CFR profiles presented in the CFR companion volume to consider how or what you use assessment. The CFR promotes action-oriented approach and suggests that language learning should be directed towards enabling learners to act in real-life situations, expressing themselves and accomplishing tasks of different nature. My understanding is that one cannot perform at a language test a level she demonstrates through the accomplishment of a task. So, and though collaborative and action-oriented tasks one can improve skills and through collaborative and action-oriented tasks, one can improve skills which may not be part of the language tests or language learning. For example, through mediation, they can develop interpersonal skills. It also suggests planning backwards from learners' real-life needs with consequent alignment between curriculum, teaching, and assessment. At this point, in accordance with putting learners' needs in the core of teaching and assessment, the CFR profiles might be of interest for you. It was discussed and thoroughly in 1996 and 1998, but because of its complexity, it was not included in the CFR. Descriptor scales can be used firstly to identify which language activities are relevant for a particular group of learners, and secondly, to establish which level those learners need to achieve in those activities in order to accomplish their goals as illustrated in the figure you see on the screen. So, and then it allows assessing learners' proficiency across 4 modes of communication rather than 4 skills, which, it was introduced by the CFR, the 4 modes of communication. Just to conclude, I'll give you, I would like to share you this figure from the CFR companion volume. The profiles can be also used assessing learners' proficiency across different languages, which I thought might be very relevant to the topic of this symposium. But as I mentioned, I leave the discussion and exchanges to the experts in this field to explore and try to find how we can best utilize those profiles to support the learning of one's language learning. And this can be used to properly assess, but more importantly, acknowledge one's plurilingual profile. So, I mean, in a given situation, let's imagine that one's home language or native language or languages that are not taught or in the school, they are not tested. But we know that the essence of plurilingual education is that one can take benefit of her own plurilingual repertoire to learn the second or third language or foreign languages better. So there is a value in this plurilingual education, and maybe this profiling can help one's proficiency in the languages taught, but as well as also the home or native language of the learner, so as a support of learning other languages. I think I just would like to again invite you to bear with us and work with us to explore this further, also explore the European language portfolio in the light of the recent developments, digital evolution, I would say. And we also invite you to follow our webinars and tell us more if you have any ideas and then expectations from Council of Europe's Language Policy Program. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will be happy to answer your questions.
Murat, thank you very much for that. You picked up on a lot of themes that this symposium has been developing. Certainly in the LAMI workshop yesterday, we were talking about those profiles and also discussing the LASLIAN project that you mentioned there. It's great to reiterate our cooperation on the CFR and its companion volume. And actually, for anybody who's interested, Brian North is leading a workshop later today on the companion volume. So you might want to go to that. That's at 15:45. Murat also mentioned the Council of Europe Alte survey about language and knowledge of society requirements and the recommendations for policy. That document is available on our resources wall in this symposium, in this exhibition space, and it's also available on our website. So, Murat, I'd like to thank you again very much for your presentation. If you have any further questions for him, please do get in touch, and we will pause there. We go on to our next presentation in a few minutes' time at 3 o'clock. And we're looking at the ECML side of Council of Europe, and we'll invite Sarah Breslin and José Nogent to come up and share with us. That's in a few minutes' time. Alternatively, you can make your way to room 1 for the scholarship winners presentation, also beginning at 3 o'clock. So see you in a few minutes' time.